This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Good to see you guys. We find ourselves on Mem Dalid Amid Bays on 44B, all the way at the top, literally on the first line. Should not be hard to identify, and I'd be willing to put down money that it is, if you're allowed to, I'd be put down money that it's the first page in Art Scroll still. All right. Here we go. So this evening, we are continuing talking about Aravos. And if all goes according to plan, we will get up to Mem Hey and Aleph up to the next Mishnah. So we're capping off a section over here in which we are, well, don't worry, we'll still be talking about the Aravos somewhat. But when we say Arava here, just Arava should be code word for the Arava ritual, what we might call the Hoshanis. And we're going to be talking about the procedure for taking the arava, maybe taken together with the lulav as well to fulfill the distinct mitzvah. Then we're going to briefly talk about the state, the physical state of the aravos for them to be kosher. Then we're going to briefly have a throwback to the question about whether aravos nowadays is a takana, an institution, or a minhag. And then we'll have some things that are broad and tangentially, but we'll take up some of our time talking about Shemitah, talking about Shabbos, and then talking about the benches in the Beis Hamikdash very briefly toward the end. So that's our roadmap for tonight. So all the way at the top of, again, 44b of Mem Daled Amud Beis. Oh, and assuming I don't slip my mind, we'll be bringing back another sefer we haven't used in a while, the Mincha Shlomo or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's Aros on the Gemara. He has a good tie-in for Hanukkah, so I know a little bit late. You're probably tired of hearing Divrei Torah about Hanukkah, but I got one last one for you. So it's like, well, speaking of Maseches Sukkah, right? We have Shmini Atzeres. So the idea is Hashem says, "Kasha alai predaschem." I want to spend just one more day with you, right? I don't want Yontif to end so soon. So hopefully we can still get a little bit of the Hanukkah spirit. Anyway, here we go. Amar Avami Arava Tzricha Shir. The Eno tell us so a few rules about Aravas. One is that it has a shear. There's a minimal measurement. We'll talk about what that is soon. The Einani tell us b'fnei atzma. It has to be taken on its own. The Einadim yotze dechavas barav shabululav, and you would not be yotze with the aravos that are inside your lulav, right? Not necessarily lulav holder, but that are together with the other minim. Now, this seems redundant. Kema de Amar Mar Einani telas el b'fnei atzma. Pshita deinadim yotzi ba'arava shebelulav. It sounds like you said the same thing twice. Once you told me that the arava needs to be taken on its own, then it would logically, I could conclude that I cannot take it together with the lulav because then it's not being taken on its own. So what is the chiddush here? Ma'adatema hani mili hecha delo agve v'hadar agve. I would think maybe this applies where I only picked it up once. So maybe if I only picked up the arba meme together once, that's only Yotze the mitzvah of the four species, not the distinct mitzvah of Arava. Aval Agve v'hadar Agve, but let's say I picked it up twice, maybe I would think I would still be Yotze with the Arava. Emelo, Kamash Malan. So, right, so Imelo, maybe I would. So Kamash Malan. So it's coming to teach us that you would still not be Yotze if you pick it up with the other minim. It's supposed to be taken independently. However, as everything goes, everything's a machlokis, right? You are Yotze with the Aravos on your lulav. If you pick up the Arbamin together and you say, I'm now fulfilling mitzvah of the four species, done, and now I'm fulfilling mitzvah of the Arava, ignore the fact that I happen to have other species in my hands, but I'm focusing on the Arava, you're Yotze the mitzvah of the Arava as well. So, okay, everything's a machlokus. What do you know? All right. Now, we mentioned the shear, the measurement. What do you need actually for the aravos? So earlier we mentioned that a minimum of 3 tfachim, of 3 handbreadths. But here we get a little bit more detail. Kamashura, and Raji says, right, Damar le'il tzricha shir, because we just mentioned that it requires a minimal amount. So, what's that? Just lost place. Here it is. Aaron Nachman, Gimel Bade Alin Lachin. So you need three stick. What do you call them? Sticks? What's the right word for it?
Twigs.
Twigs. Was that? That's better than sticks.
Triangle,
Yeah,
yeah.
3 twigs. Okay, let's go with that. You need three twigs that have moist leaves on them still. Rav Sheshes Amar, Afilu ala echad ubad echad. Now this sounds like he's saying even if you have one leaf with one twig, they're not even connected to each other. That's sufficient. And even though he seems to have a more radical shita, the Gemara says this is a step too far. Ala echad ubad echad sakadaitach ele ema afilu ala echad bivad echad. He's saying is as long as the leaf is still attached to that one twig, you'll be yotze. Still a bit of a radically lenient shita, but it's not as crazy as we first thought it was. All right. And then a throwback to one other idea. Remember last week we had a machlokis on the previous Amud about whether the Arava is Yesod Nevi'im. Was it instituted by the Nevi'im? Was it top down? Or was it Minhag Nevi'im? Was it bottom up that people started doing it? And then at the end of the Gemara that we left off with last week, we concluded that there's a difference between Mikdash and Gvulin. In the Beis HaMikdash, it was Halacha LaMoshe MiSinai. That's pretty much as close as you get to the Torah without it being in the Torah. Halacha LaMoshe, not exactly, but it's pretty high up. And outside the Beis HaMikdash, it was either Yesod Nevi'im or Minhag Nevi'im. Now, what would be the difference whether it's Yesod Nevi'im instituted by the Nevi'im or just a minhag that they gave their approval to? So the nafkamina is whether you make a bracha or not. So we're going to see in just a moment, some people did not make brachos on their Hoshanis, which will indicate to us that they only thought it was a minhag Nevi'im. Amar Aivu Hava Kamina Kamei de Rabbi Elazar Bat Tzadok. The Aisiyahu Gavra Arava Kamei. So I was in front of Rav Elazar Bat Tzadok, and this gentleman comes in with his Arava, Shakal Chavet. He takes it and waves it and whacks it back and forth. Velo Baruch, but he didn't make a bracha on it. So, it would seem from the fact that Rav Elazar Bar Tzadok did not tell him otherwise. Kasavar minhag nevi'imhu. It must be that he held that the aravos outside the Beis HaMikdash are just a minhag nevi'im, and a minhag nevi'im we would not make a bracha on. Likewise, Aivu v'chiska b'nei barte derav. Another story where someone comes ahead, whacks the Ravos around, doesn't make a bracha, and that seems again to be an implicit, a tacit approval of it not making a bracha on the Hoshanis, thereby indicating to us that it was only held to be a minhag nevi'im, not yesod nevi'im. Now, this is where we will bring in Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in the Ha'aros the Mincha Shlomo. So this is interesting because it sounds like our Gemara is assuming that we don't make brachos on minhagim, on customs. But is that really true? So there does seem to be, especially between Ashkenazim and Sfardim, a general machlokis whether you make a bracha on a minhag. So, for instance, when Halal is a minhag, Ashkenazim do, Sfardim don't. For those who say Halal Yom HaAtzmaut, the debate about whether to, once you accept doing Halal Yom HaAtzmaut, there's a second question of do you make the bracha on Yom HaAtzmaut, and that gets partially to that question of, all right, once I say it's a legitimate minhag, then do I still make a bracha on what is a minhag? So Rosh Shlomo Zalman points out that when it comes to, what's interesting, between Mincha and Ma'ariv, every night of Hanukkah and Shul, we would light the candles, and even though I would then go home and light them again with a bracha, I still made a bracha in the shul. Now this is funny because the mitzvah is near Yishu Beso. I'm being yotzi when I go home, so why am I making a bracha at shul? One explanation could be people who don't have a place to light, that's where they're being yotze. Similar to the logic of doing kiddush on Friday night, even though that too is very questionable. But you see, there's a difference between a minhag that is creation ex nihilo, that's yesh me'ayin, that comes out of nowhere, versus a minhag which is an outgrowth of a mitzvah. Meaning, let me read for you the language here. Even the Beis Yosef, or even the Mechaber, who's the Sephardic authority, who believes that generally we don't make, for instance, he says, "Da-da-da-dum. Aval Pisha said minhag kamo halal Rosh Chodesh," right? Even though saying halal Rosh Chodesh is a minhag, and the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber says we don't make a bracha on it. Zerak harchavas mitzvahs hadlaka mehabayis lebeis hakneses ve'eno davar chadash. The lighting we did in shul was not something new, but rather it was simply just an expansion of the pre-existing obligation of lighting in our homes. Since it's not something that was made out of the blue and it was made ex nihilo, therefore, the same way I make a bracha at home, I make a bracha at shul because the shul's a corollary to what I'm doing at home. So it piggybacks on that. But the idea of saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh is a davar chadash. And likewise, he says it could be argued, even though he notes that we did it in the Beis Hamikdash, but he believes that doing it in Gvula, doing it outside the Beis Hamikdash, was a completely new minhag, not connected to the base what was being done in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore, since it's a minhag that is not an extension of a pre-existing obligation, you would not make a bracha on it. So the only debate we have here is it a minhag or is it not a minhag? If it's a minhag, we don't make a bracha, unlike lighting Chanukah licht in shul, which one could argue is an expansion of the obligation of lighting in oneself. Now, he says, why can't we just talk about Hoshanis outside the Beis Hamikdash as an expansion of what was being done in the Beis Hamikdash? He makes a distinction, but it seems that in the Mincha Shlomo, he's aware that it's not the best delineation. I see the citation here is actually from the Tshuvos Mincha Shlomo. So apparently, if you look at his Tshuvos, there's a lot more there, but as the Svarm go, they give you like the excerpt that's relevant for us. Okay, that was our supplement for this evening. Back to our featured presentation. Halftime show's over. Here we go. The Amar Ivu. So once we brought in Ivu, we now just get all these different kinds of stories that involved Ivu. Amar Ivu. Hava kamina kamed Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok asala kamehu gavra Amar le. So right, once again, Ivu is hanging out with Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok. Comes in this man, and this man is it seems like a nice guvir, very wealthy guy. He owns a lot of real estate. In fact, Amar le Karyasa Isli. I have a whole village. He's like, what do you call that? When someone like the parrots, that's what they would call it. There's I don't know what the right English term is for this, but like the manor lord. This guy basically owned a whole village. I don't know. Mayor is probably not the right term. Like, what do you call like those old guys, like, back in Europe where they have the whole village under their thumb and I don't know. Okay, whatever it is. They call him the parrots. There's like always all these stories I remember growing up on about like the Paras threw the Yid into jail, and then you ever hear these kind of things? There were these Jewish story tapes growing up, and there's always like an evil Paras. This guy, thank God, is actually seems like a good guy. So he owns a whole village, and Isle Karmaya, Isle Zesa. I have a vineyard. I have an olive grove. This guy Mamish has everything. Isli. Va'asu karyasu mikashkashim bekarmaya, and come the members of the village, and they go ahead and they dig up, they maintain the vineyard. Va'ochlim bezesa, and then they'll eat from the olive garden. Arich o lo arich. Now, mind you, this is all taking place during Shemitah. Now, the issue is, he's asking is, am I allowed to pay them for working my field by giving them some of the produce from the olive garden? Not saying to an actual olive garden, not to like Olive Garden at the restaurant. You can imagine that. So can I pay them with the Shemitah food? And he responds and says, Amar le lo arich. That's not proper. Why is it not proper? Because during Shemitah, there's Shemitah's karka. You're supposed to declare your land free for anyone to come in and grab a bite to eat. So for you to use your fields as compensation for their work means you are retaining ownership over it, and that is improper. So have a kashavik levazel. So unclear precisely why, but he left the room to take a quick break. There's different interpretations. Maybe he had to just get a breather to think about it. Maybe he was going to stop, going to implement those instructions right away. Amar, meanwhile, Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok says, "Kdo havisi dayari ba'ara hada memshnin." I've been living here for 40 years. V'lo chamisi bar inish mahayich ba'archan desaknon kadin. I've never seen such a person who walks in the paths of righteousness like this guy. Now, what's so special about him? Hadar va'asa, he comes back, va'amrle, my avitz. They ask him, so what did you do? Sorry, he said, what should I do? Amrle, he further instructs this paritz, efgar zeise lichashuchya. You should declare all of your olives ownerless. And chashuchya, Rashi tells us, is for the poor, I believe. Where's our Rashi over here? Yes, la'aniyim, to the poor. You should free for all the poor to come. The same prote, the kashkushe kramim. And those people who are digging, maintaining your vineyard, so those people pay them with money instead. Don't pay them with the fruits that you're supposed to declare ownerless. And indeed, he listened to his rabbi, right? Isn't that amazing? That's how he got this big praise. The rabbi told him to do something. He listened to the rabbi, so now he sings this guy's praises. I guess that's how low the bar was. I'm just joking, but Paul, yeah.
How is this parallel to the issue of whether it's minhag or halacha?
So the connection just here is that we have the same cast of characters. The Gemara will do this quite frequently, where it'll have, it was Ivu and Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok. So basically, we just had a conversation about them relevant to our actual sugya, and then the Gemara's like, oh, by the way, there were some other interesting interactions that they had. So it's just giving us these other random interactions, nothing to do with Maseches Sukkah directly per se. Good point. All right. But here's the issue. Okay, great. You're not paying them with Shemitah food, but why are they maintaining your field in the first place during Shemitah? You're not supposed to be working the fields during Shemitah. Kashkushe Mishari. Who said they could go ahead and they could dig around in the field? Vatanya. It says in the Brisa, Bahashvias Tishmetena Unatashta. So Tishmetena teaches us Lakashkesh from digging around. Natashta Miliskal and Natasha teaches us from removing the stones. So forget about how you're compensating these workers. These workers shouldn't be on your field during Shemitah in the first place. So Amar Rav Ukva Bar Chama Trei Kashkushe Havu. There's two kinds of kashkushi apparently. Chad Susume Pili. One is there's cracks that begin to be made that expose the roots of the tree. So you're not really growing anything. You're just like filling in deficiencies. V'chad avrui ilone. And one is where you're actually like ivri, you're doing actions like piercing into it in a way that causes it to grow more. So one is you're just kind of like removing impediments, so to speak, problems that come up, versus one is you're actively cultivating it. And therefore, because of that distinction, every lane aser, it's prohibited to cultivate it. So say pili shari, but if there's like these holes that come about, these cracks, you're allowed to fill them up. So that's why they were allowed to do that kind of work on the field, and they had to be compensated with money, not with food of shvius, because that is supposed to be ownerless anyway. All right. That's the end of that piece.
Yeah. How covering, I mean, if the point is that you're not supposed to exert ownership, I don't see how keeping the trees from perishing is any different than, I don't see how the piercing is different from the covering.
Right. So I think the difference is that the fruits that grow are declared ownerless, but you're not declaring your land and trees hefker. I think you're declaring the produce hefker. But it's not like someone could come into, I don't think someone could come into your field and say, oh, this is great, free real estate. I'm gonna build an apartment complex here. You're still the owner of the field. I think it's more the produce that comes forth. That was my understanding of it. Otherwise, what's to stop someone from saying, real estate's very expensive these days. Shemitah year, what do you know? All right, I'm gonna, bring in the contractor. Let's build a house. So I don't think to that degree you have to declare it ownerless. Okay. Okay, and here we go again. Paul, Va'amar Ivu Mishum Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok. Again, same cast of characters, completely different discussion. Now we're talking about traveling on Erev Shabbos. If you've ever had the misfortune of a winter Shabbos, trying to travel a few hours, then getting caught in traffic, you'll appreciate this halacha. Al Yahalich Adam Arvi Shabbosos Yoser Mi Gimel Parsos. You shouldn't travel more than 3 parsos in on Erev Shabbos. I don't have the precise measurements here. Maybe does the art scroll give like an estimation in the footnote there by any chance of how long Gimel Parsos translates into? I don't have the
Yeah,
conversion.
it's between 2.2 and 3 miles.
Okay, and I guess you're walking, so
Right.
okay. So you should basically you shouldn't be planning any you shouldn't be planning that last leg of your journey on Erev Shabbos. And Amar Rav Kahana lo Amar El Beise Avalu Shpize Amai Dunakit Samech. This is when you're traveling home and your family says, "Oh, we didn't know you're arriving today. We didn't we use the smaller crock pot, not the bigger crock pot." And they're saying, "Oh my gosh, we have to quickly run to the stores. Oh no, the Jewish shops are not open on Fridays. We can't get more food. What are we going to do?" So don't surprise them last minute like that. But if you're going as a guest somewhere, you're probably relying on the rations that you're bringing with you when you come for Shabbos. So I guess it's not as problematic if you are traveling on Erev Shabbos in that case. Ve'igad Amri, but there's another way to another account of how this went down. Amrav Kahana lo nitzrecha ela afila beisei. So meaning kal v'chomer when you're going to your house, but he says the same rule applies when you're traveling anywhere. And this is because Amarav Kahana, B'didi Hava Uvda, I was in the shoes of the person traveling on Erev Shabbos. Va'afilu kased harsana lo ashkachi. And I got to this place, and they didn't even have, apparently it was popular to have this kind of fried fish back then. I guess if you're British, right? Fish and chips. Yeah, I guess the people in Bavel invented it long before all the British folks did. We don't have any British people on here that I could poke fun at. Okay. Yes. All right. So they were already into fried fish back then, but he said they didn't even have the fried fish for me. Okay. Final section for tonight. Back to Lula for a moment. So if we rewind 3 or so weeks ago when we learned, was it 3 weeks ago? Maybe more. I don't know. Whenever we did the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like a month ago at this point. Whenever it was, when we learned the Mishnah at the beginning of the parak. So the Mishnah told us that back in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would bring their lulavim over on Friday when it overlapped with Shabbos the first day, and then they would come and claim the lulavim on Shabbos morning, which was the first day of Yontif. As we mentioned, nowadays we don't take the lulav even on the first day when it overlaps with Shabbos. But according to what happened during times of the Beis Hamikdash, how did this go down? So Tani Tana Kamed Rav Nachman, Sudrin al Gag Itztaba. They had these kind of like benches, surfaces, and they would put it on the gag of the roof of it. Amarle, V'chili Yashin Hutzarech. What are you trying to dry them out and render them puzzle? Ela Ima al Gava Itztaba. You're putting it on the bench, but there's a cover over it protecting it from the sun. All right. Finally, once we're talking about the infrastructure of the Beis Hamikdash, Amar Rechava, Amar Rav Yehuda, Har Habais, Stav Kafel Haya, Stav Lefnim Mistav. They would apparently, the formation, I don't have any pictures on me. Does Art Scroll give any pictures at all?
No.
I should run my Masifta Gemara. Maybe they have pictures in there, but you'll have to take the Gemara's word for it and try to visualize. They'd have like a double bench formation out there. And that's apparently what they had. All right. Very good. Right. Rashi says, Itztabos makifos so itztabos acheres hekif lefnim mehekif. So there'd be 2 rows. Wonderful. All right. And that brings us to the top of Mem Hey Amud Aleph. And so hopefully next time we will begin with a new Mishnah. Until then, wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos. As far as I know, we should have a regular shiur schedule this coming week, God willing. All right.
Rabbi, are you aware that Rabbi Cohn said you're doing Mishnah?
Thank you for the reminder. I guess, do I have to switch over to the other account?
I don't know.
I think so, because I think there's 1 or 2 people who I think Melissa, if Melissa decides to log on, and she'll be waiting for us. So
Also, Jonathan.
oh, Jonathan as well. All right, I will switch over to Rabbi Cohen's account. So just give me a minute or 2, and I'll see you. I'll see you then. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
We'll
Have a
have 2
good
minutes.
Shabbos.
What
All right,
time
have a
did
good
you say
Shabbos,
you're
everyone.
doing it? I think he said 8:50, no?
Okay. So yeah, they'll give me a second to upload this to YE Torah. So that's good. All right.
8:45 and
You-